I turned 40 on a Saturday. I arranged everything myself, the restaurant, the private room, the cake. I even typed out my own invitations because no one else bothered. 20 chairs stood waiting, a long table weighed down with food no one touched. The only sound was the waitstaff clearing glasses that had never been filled. Even my wife stayed away. I waited 3 hours, forcing polite smiles at the servers as if nothing was wrong. Before leaving, I asked them to box the cake. I carried it home, slid it into the fridge, and never cut a slice. It sat there until the frosting turned to stone, a reminder of the night I was forgotten. She walked in later, the scent of wine and laughter clinging to her, but not the kind that belonged to me. She didn't even mention my birthday. It was as if it had been erased. A week later, a message from her lit up my phone. Dad's birthday was amazing. $1,800. Venmo me. No apology. No acknowledgement of what she'd skipped. Just a demand. I stared at the words, stunned at the indifference, the casual cruelty. I sent her $1 with a note. For your honesty. That was the exact moment I knew our marriage was dead. We had been together 12 years. I used to believe in us, believed in her. I worked long hours, thinking it was for both of us, for stability, the house, the future we promised each other. She wanted comfort, I gave it. She wanted freedom, I allowed it. And all the while, I ignored the decay creeping in. I overlooked the late nights, the secret smiles at her phone, the sharp hostility whenever I asked simple questions. I convinced myself distance was natural after so many years. I told myself I was imagining things. Her father made it worse. Always sneering, always mocking me as the safe choice. He wasn't wrong. I was safe, steady, predictable. And in their eyes, that made me disposable. Her text became my turning point. The insult was my clarity. I didn't scream, didn't beg, didn't even ask why she could spend nearly $2,000 celebrating her father while ignoring my 40th. Instead, I began to watch. Every morning before she woke, I combed through our bank account. Every night while she showered, I checked her emails. She had grown careless. Receipts, hotel reservations, wire transfers to strangers' names. It was all there. I saved everything. But I never confronted her. That would have given her power. I learned to disappear in plain sight. At dinner, I nodded at her stories. In bed, I feigned sleep. Silence became my weapon. For months, I prepared. First, I quietly moved money. Not enough to set off alarms, but enough to build a safety net. Then I hired a lawyer, the kind who thrived on destruction. When I handed him the folder of evidence, he grinned. "You'll win everything," he said. All I had to do was wait. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Just 2 nights after I'd sent her that single dollar, she burst into my office at home, waving her phone. "You're pathetic. My dad thinks you're pathetic. You couldn't even pay for his birthday. What kind of man does that?" she spat.
I didn't respond.
I let her rage fill the room, her voice cutting like glass. She mistook my quiet for surrender. What she never realized was that silence was the sharpest weapon I had. The next morning, I filed for divorce. My attorney wasted no time. Assets locked, accounts divided, and my evidence submitted in perfect sequence. Names, dates, photos, transactions. Her betrayal wasn't hearsay. It was documented fact. 2 days later, she came home to find my side of the closet stripped bare. The house keys rested on the counter. Next to them, an envelope by the coffee maker. Inside, the divorce papers and a USB drive holding every piece of proof I had collected. No message, just truth. Neighbors told me later about the scream that tore through the house that night, shaking the walls. I wasn't there to hear it. 2 days after that, police arrived at my office. Accusations poured out. Fraud, theft, financial abuse. All her words, none of mine. She thought dragging officers into it would humiliate me, would force me back under her control. But I was ready. I greeted them calmly, hands resting on the desk, and slid a binder forward, the same one my lawyer already had. Inside were bank records, screenshots, her signed receipts. evidence showing that the money she claimed I stole had been funneled into accounts she shared with her lover. The officers leafed through the pages in heavy silence. One finally shut the binder, glanced at me, then at her father, who had stormed in red-faced, spewing threats. "Sir, you need to leave," the officer told him. I'll never forget the expression on her face in that moment. Not fury, not grief, but realization. She hadn't only lost control, she had lost the story she'd been writing. The fallout was immediate. Her father's business dealings unraveled the moment whispers of fraud reached the wrong ears. Her affair collapsed too. The married man vanished the instant his name surfaced in the divorce filings. She tried to recast herself as the victim, but the evidence crushed that attempt. The court awarded me the house, most of the accounts, and something she thought she'd always keep: my silence. I gave that up, too. When the judge asked if I had anything to add, I looked straight at her. In front of her family, her lawyer, the courtroom, I spoke one line. "You didn't forget my birthday, you erased it. This is my gift back." That was when she broke. Not because of the words themselves, but because everyone there understood them. Now, months later, I sit in the home she was certain would one day be hers. I drink coffee from the same mug I held the morning after my ruined birthday. The cake is gone. I threw it out the night before I walked away from her. People ask me if I regret being so cold, if I regret not fighting to save the marriage. The answer is no. You don't fight for someone who leaves you alone on your 40th birthday, then sends you the bill for her father's party. You don't fight for someone who sees you as a wallet, a placeholder, a shadow. You don't fight for them. You erase them.